Welcome to Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. My name is Emmanuel Sheung, and I'll be taking you history. So today, we'll be looking at military intervention in Nigerian politics.
Acing your WAEC and NECO examinations has been made easy by the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with the Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates television program. Join seasoned teachers as they take you through these core subjects, targeting the exact syllabus of WAEC and NECO. Watch Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates through these social media platforms to access more educational content and give their feedback. Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Pass your examinations with flying colors.
Military intervention in Nigeria policies, otherwise known as coup d'etat, that took place in January 15, 1966. This is a very sensitive topic that comes out most times in WAEC and NECO question. So I will implore you to listen attentively. At the end of this lesson, students will, 1, describe the concept of military rule and coup d'etat. 2, students will examine the coup d'etat of January 15, 1966. Also, students will identify the major reasons of the first military intervention in Nigeria. Also, students will analyze the Nigerian politician assassinated during the 1966 military rule. We'll also look at the major actors of the first coup d'etat that took place in Nigeria in 1966. And lastly, we'll look at the reasons and the effect of the military coup on Nigeria. What is military? The military is an organized armed force that is trained and equipped for external security. External security in the sense that their purpose is to serve as a national defense within Nigeria and to also be in charge of any external aggression coming into Nigeria. So, the military has often played a very significant role in maintaining order and seizing powers through coup. Unlike democratic system of government, the change in military rule is coup d'etat, not through election. What is coup d'etat? Coup d'etat is a sudden and often violent and forceful taking over of power from the government with the use of force. With the use of force. It involves the overthrow of existing political personnel and political leaders and the establishment of a new undemocratic and military rule. When Nigeria gained their independence in 1960, Nigeria started with a parliamentary system of government. But something happened on January 15, 1966, which is the coup d'etat. the forceful, violent, and sudden overthrowing of a democratic government. On January 15, 1966, some rebel soldiers took over government. This set of soldiers were mainly from a particular region of the country, which is the eastern part. So these coup plotters, they started attacking the key and the major politicians that were in existence as at that time. At the federal level, if you recall, we have Tafawa Balewa, who was the prime minister, and Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. Okay, so according to the majors who rebelled and forcefully took over the government, they claim that their reason was as a result of those at the aim of affairs. As at that time, they were not doing what is expected of them. There were allegations of corruption, and there were also allegations that some of their ministers and cabinets were living flamboyant lives while the people are being neglected. Let us look at the major actors. Who are those people who took part? The major people who took part: one, Major Chukwuma Nzegu. In fact, Major Chukwuma Nzegu was the main planner. He was the leader of that movement. He was the leader of the movement, and he has some other military forces, personnel, that assisted him to carry out this act. Also, we have Adewale Ademoyega, also, which was one of the visionary Nigerian army majors who led the 1966 coup d'etat. Also, Timothy Onwaotegu is also there. Onfui Chikuma is also one of the senior officers in the army as at that time. Likewise, Emmanuel Ifeujuna and Captain Umubizi Emmanuel. They were the major actors who ensured that power was being taken over. So, on January 15, they started going to the houses, to the residence of the major politicians, and started eliminating them immediately. One of those who escaped this was Nnamdi Azikiwe, and as at that time, I would say he was lucky to be outside the country as at that time. He went for a conference. That was when he listened to the news and he saw that the military has taken over. Now, it is important that we look at some of the politicians that were assassinated and killed during the coup d'etat. Remember that the military made use of violent and forceful overthrowing, not that election or any other means is being put in place. Number one is Samuel Ladoke Akintola. As at that time, Ladoke Akintola was the premier in charge of the Western region. In fact, on the day Samuel Ladoke Akintola was assassinated, he was in his house. He was in his house when he saw troops of soldiers who wanted to go into his apartment. So he also tried to fight back, but the military forces overpowered him and he was killed. Also, Sir Ahmadu Bello as well, who happens to be the premier of the northern region, as at that time, was also killed. Festus Okotie Ebo, who was the minister of finance, as at that time, was also eliminated. Sadly, the first Prime Minister of Nigeria, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, was also eliminated. Samuel Adesujo Mulegun was also eliminated. It is worthy to note that some of them also died with their wife. For example, Ade Mulegun, Samuel Ladoke Akitola, was actually with his wife on the bed when the military came over and he was assassinated. Going forward, what are the reasons? There's reason for everything. After the coup d'etat, when investigation was being made, there were some reasons that the coup plotters claimed to have been the major reason why they forcefully took over. Number one is the allegation of corruption and mismanagement. It was alleged that the prime ministers at that time and his cabinet were corrupt. Although, after they died, when there began to be peaceful arena, when investigation was being made, we realized that even the prime minister, as at that time, had only one house where he lives. And even his account balance as at that time was in red. In fact, one of the cabinet was even paying loans. But what is significant is that the reason for the military intervention by the coup plotters is the accusation of corruption and mismanagement. Also, ethnic tensions. When Nigeria gained her independence, it was looking as if some set of groups were marginalized, especially the minority groups. You know, in Nigeria, we have three majority groups, which is the Hausa, Igbo, and the Yoruba. So some other minority groups, they thought of it, they were not happy that they were not being used during the administration. Also, military discontent. The military forces, they were not happy with their affairs in terms of what they earn and also their working lifestyle. So they were discontented. That was one of the reasons why they took over the government. Also, regional rivalry. From inception, even during the colonial era, when the method of regionalism came in, some regions were not happy. Some regions do not even want the amalgamation that took place in the first instance. So as early as 1960 up to 1966, there were regional rivalry between the regions and the ethnic groups we have. And lastly, there is economic inequality. There was disparities and uneven distribution of resources, whereby resources that is meant for the whole country, which is supposed to be shared equally among all the regions, it was noticed that some regions were favored over the other. So the economic disparities also led to the reasons for the military intervention that took place in 1966. Going forward, we'll look at the effects of the first military coup in Nigeria. Number one is that it brought about political upheaval in the sense that there were prolonged dominant force. It brought about distortion, instability in the political affairs of the country. Also, ethnic tensions and conflicts. Conflict began to take place Because if you notice the major actors, you will see that they were majorly from the southern part of the country. So the northern, they began to rebel. And also, there was economic stagnation. In fact, this first military coup d'etat was what led to the civil war in Nigeria between the eastern region, otherwise known as the Biafra, and other major and ethnic groups in Nigeria. Then economy was stagnant, because the truth of the matter is that the military are not well experienced in political administration. What they are being trained for has to do with defense, national security against internal and external interference or aggression. So, practice question. This is a very sensitive question because if you look at WAEC question 2010, they asked them to highlight the event that followed the coup d'etat of January 1966 to the outbreak of the Civil War. Remember, I said the coup d'etat led to the Civil War. So let us look at the sequence of events that took place from immediately after the first military coup d'etat up to the Civil War. After the assassination of prominent political leaders that we have mentioned earlier, Samuel Akintola, Tafawa Balewa, and others, there was the announcement of new head of state by General Aguiyi-Ironsi. In fact, General Aguiyi-Ironsi was not part of the coup plotters. While the coup plotters were already killing a lot of people, killing the political actors, politicians as at that time, General Aguiyi-Ironsi quickly made a broadcast and declared himself as the new head of state. And maybe that's part of the reason why his tenure was very short. In about 6 months or thereabout, he was also killed. Also, 3, appointment of regional political governors. The regional military governors replaced the premier of each region. 4, suspension of the constitution and political activities. The military suspended the constitution as at that time, and as at that time, the constitution being used was the 1960 Independence Constitution. So the military head of state as at that time cancelled and declared the constitution null and void. Then also, declaration of unitary government, mass killing of Igbo army officers and civilians in the north. Then there was counter-coup of July 1966 that led to the killing of General Aguiyi-Ironsi, and Major General Yakubu Gowon became the head of state. Also, there were crises of leadership between Gowon and Ojukwu. An attempt to settle the crisis proved abortive. That was when General Ojukwu had to declare Biafra state or nation, and this led to the Civil War. So these are the sequence from the coup d'etat in January 15, 1966 up to July 1966. Like I said earlier, Aguiyi only spent roughly 6 months or thereabout as the military head of state.
Eko Learners Support, a support program of the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for WAEC and NECO candidates.
Thank you for listening to me. If you have any question, observation, or feedback, kindly contact us on any of our social media platforms displayed on the screen. Thank you once again.
Acing your WAEC and NECO examinations has been made easy by the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with the Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates television program. Join seasoned teachers as they take you through these core subjects, targeting the exact syllabus of WAEC and NECO. Watch Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates through these social media platforms to access more educational content and give their feedback. Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Pass your examinations with flying colors.
Eko Learners Support, a support program of the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for WAEC and NECO candidates.